Well, the only way that you know light exists in the first place is because there's darkness. That's where the light comes from.
Find resides inside and nowhere else. Watch the words you say, the power's when you test the action. All the money is invested in the best distraction. Why the press be asking questions that don't press what happened? Only dress the facts with captions, don't address attacking. My heart and mind is total.
Peace family, it's 19 Keys. We're here for another episode of 19 Minutes with 19 Keys. Today I have a very special guest, none other than the good brother KT, the Arch Degree. And we're going to talk about something that I believe that all of you all have, and that's melanin. Now, melanin is black gold. People have sold black gold. People have taken this and processed it. I like to look at the metaphysical properties of it because our physical features also have a connection to our mental feature, and that's resilience. That's the ability to take harsh conditions, radiation, and then transform it into something useful. So the stress, the anxiety, the oppression, the things we go through, we still take that and turn it into good trauma through the process of transmutation. So can you speak on the value of this paint that God put us on us?
So like I said, we identify with RBG no matter where we go in the world. Everybody got their own flags, no matter what country you go to, what island you go to, there's going to be some RBG there. And that RBG is to let us know how important pigments are. You got the red for the hemoglobin, you got the black for the melanin, you got the green for the chlorophyll. It's letting you know what you need to eat in order to keep your melanin strong. Now, melanin is not only able to grow and get stronger by being in the sun, we also produce our own light within inside our body that's stronger than the sun.
So I want you to touch on that a little more. You said that we produce something that's stronger than the sun. Now, most people think about the kelvins of the sun and the degrees of the sun and the nova of the sun and the power of the sun. Something that's said to be 93 million miles away. But when we step out in that Atlanta heat, it feels like it's right in your face. Right? So how are we producing something that has more power than the sun itself?
Well, the surface of the sun is the core of the sun, is 20,000 Kelvin. All right? So with that being said, we have bonds that connect our proteins, that connect our amino acids, that connect the molecules in our body, that has absorption, meaning it's able to absorb light that's stronger than UV, that goes into X-ray and go into gamma. So if we got molecules in our body that have the ability to absorb light like the Incredible Hulk, but when we go outside, we know good and well that the sun ain't allowing that amount of strong light into the earth, then where else is it coming from? Our melanin has the ability to take the light of the sun and magnify it and enrich it and turn it into light stronger than the light that's hitting us every day.
So, Dr. Wesley put in his book, the Encyclopedia of Proof, that the black man is God. He said, he talked about the blue beings at the original, start of this planet, and all the depiction of gods where they show them having blue skin. Now, they hinted in this in some of the Marvel movies, right? We've seen this latest in like Wakanda and things of that nature. But he gave a breakdown. He said the luminescent body of the original melanated God, right? We also have biophotons that will shine light through that luminescent dark rapture of his skin, which would then create this blue hue that we will perceive. So we walked around with so much energy as original beings, so much light that manifested from us, right? And because we were cast in this darkness, that light came out as a blue spectrum. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the only way that you know light exists in the first place is because there's darkness. That's where the light comes from. So when we look inside of our body, we have our cells, we have something called mitochondria. Our mitochondria is what's responsible for creating all the energy inside of our body along with melanin. What ends up happening is melanin splits water. Now, if you know anything about the color blue, that's one of the most dynamic blue colors we got, the sky and the ocean. So what melanin does is it's able to split water. It splits H2O And every time it splits H2O, it releases plasma. It releases light. And we use that plasma, we use that light, and we use that hydrogen gas in order to fuel the body, communicate through the body, as well as to glow. Because we all glow. We just so dumbed down with our vision and our sight that we're not able to see the glow that exists around us.
That's powerful. And we talking about, X-Men depicted that as well. All of the black characters in X-Men besides Storm were blue. You had Beast, you had Nightcrawler. These were some original people, and they was all smart as hell. Nightcrawler straight up Muslim. You know what I'm saying? and we know that X-Men was created based on black people, right? So it's really cultural appropriation. Because Stan Lee really just stole, the civil rights story, the black Muslim story, and then whitewashed it and sold it to the world, right, as heroes. So when you understand that gene that he was talking about that we have that separates us but makes us special is the same reason that we hate it. He was talking about that molecule. He was talking about that melanin that we have. So we walk outside and we can be hated just because our reflection is the reflection of the sun. It also gets to that point of enlightenment. I read a study years ago, and I haven't done any current research about it, but they was talking about how the pigment in your eyes can become darker. Right? And this darkening and that melanin in your mind represents you getting smarter. Right? So it's like I always just want my eyes to be dark as hell. Right? Because that is a dominant effect within your body. Having light eyes is recessive. We know this from doctors. We know this from science. So I always wanted to become darker in the mind. Not just in the skin, but darker in the mind. And this is not something that most people want to achieve. But I want to ask you a direct question. How do you activate the light? Because the Honorable Minister Farrakhan said something that stuck with me. He said that even if you have the light, but you don't activate it, you're still in the dark. And I liken that to the analogy of if somebody cut off your lights in your house, and even if you pay the bill, but if the light switch is off, until you put motion and action into flipping that switch, you will still be in the dark. So there are many people, they got the melanin power, they got the knowledge, right? But they do not live in the light because they don't put action to the light. So it's not enlightenment.
So if we're talking about genes and we're talking about eyes, then we're talking about OCA2. OCA2 is a gene that is responsible for the coloring of the eye. And there's something called SNPs, which is single nucleotide polymorphism. These are mutations in this gene that results in having the blue eye. So when you want to understand the coloring of the eye, there's only certain colors. I know we talk about greens and all these other exotic colors, but it's really just dark brown, light brown, and blue. And they show the mutations that occur in this OCA2. Now, OCA2 is actually the new name for the gene. The original name for the gene was P protein. So that's how you really need to push that P. You know what I'm saying? You push that P by taking care of your eyes, because your eyes is a clock. Your eyes are not just a camera. They're responsible for something called chronobiology, which is the timing mechanisms that is responsible for tuning the entire system. And the only way that's going to happen is by getting in touch with your circadian rhythm and cleaning your eyes. That's why I talk about the honey. Now, we got honey all in all the stores, but that's not the honey I'm talking about. I'm talking about Nessu Nectar, the stingless bee honey that Dr. Sebi spoke of. And this honey you can put in your eyes, and it contains, in this 2-ounce bottle, you got 250,000 flowers. 250,000 flowers is in that bottle. Pollen, oh, of course. Crack it open. Pollen is inside of there. And it's saturated with something called phenols. Phen means light. This is a 6-sided hexagon that absorbs light. This ain't nothing but pure, unadulterated sunlight that tastes like heaven. And when you put it in your eyes, it's the first time that you're actually feeding your brain. Because we read and we feed our brain. We watch things and we feed our brain. But do we actually give our eyeballs food, which is our brain?
So that's key. So he said it's the first time you feed your brain. So a lot of people do not know that your eyes protrude outward as your brain is forming and developing through your skull, so that your eyes are a part of your brain, right? And so this is why they have something called the 1,000-eye stare. The 1,000-eye stare happens when you have received an over amount of trauma, right? And it sticks with you because it is on the brain, because trauma can create inflammation within the brain. And so what you're seeing is inside the brain. So, and a person, people say Lil Durk has it. I know a lot of people in the streets that have that 1,000-eye stare where it look like glass, right? The trauma just sticks with them. So, you know, what we watch directly feeds into our brain, right? Closing our eyes allows us to decrease the stimulation. This is why people stop, close my eyes. Why? Because you're not taking in any light. And while you're not taking in that light, other processes of the brain get to work more efficiently because that process does not have to operate. So therefore, you can think more clearly with your eyes closed than your eyes open, which you can use your third eye to open up more eyes. Talk to him.
Listen, no, that's power right there. That's power. No. That's an alley-oop. That's an alley-oop right there, because when you close your eyes, now you're listening. Now you hear. And in the beginning was the word. So we know that in the beginning was sound. And what makes melanin so powerful is the fact that it works off vibration, hence Black Panther with vibranium. So the same way light got photons, sound got phonons. And phonons represents the vibratory frequency in the molecular structure. This is why if I take a membrane and I put sand on it, and I start putting frequencies of sound to that membrane, that sand will take form in sacred geometrical shapes. So our form and our structure is based on sound. And you might ask, well, what is the membrane? If the calcium and the minerals and everything like that creates the form, what's the membrane? The membrane is the melanin, because if you look at the molecular structure of eumelanin, they're in sheets. When we were first born, the first thing that develops, ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm, those are 3 skins. So the membrane is the melanin in which our minerals end up taking form. Melanin drops entropy to give rise to our existence and life, so our design can denote our function.
Make some noise for that, people, please. We are the generation that has so much light because we have been given more light. I can't say that any other generation, but we're given an overstimulus of light. We may have too much light, and therefore we got so much energy, but nothing to do with it. At least nothing constructive, so the light becomes destructive to us. We're consuming light, which is information. So when we consume information, it's sending electrical signals to the brain, and we just storing more of that, and we become addicted to the process of being stimulated, learning more, storing more light, storing more energy, just being in the sun, being in the knowledge. So we are a generation that has the light, but lack the activation. So now we have to go from master teachers or master learners to master builders, which is activating the knowledge that you have within inside. So now I know how much light you have by how you activate it, not what you learn. Because we want to be master knowers. I know something. I nobody care about your information, right? How do you put it into execution, right? So for me, awareness without execution does not become enlightenment. To me, the formula of enlightenment is knowledge plus action. So when I see somebody actively living what they know, like a refrigerator full of food, right? And you say, oh, I just learned that this food is bad for me. Well, now you're aware. You are a conscious human being. Congratulations. The person that changes their lifestyle, changes the food, changes what they eat, that's an enlightened person.
So there's a series right now out called Painkiller. I implore everybody to check this series out because it's talking about the opioid crisis, right? Talking about the oxycodone. What we're not recognizing when we watch this series is that, see, they were all talking about how to take heroin from it being a needle and drugs to it just being an acceptable pill, right? But this was in the late 90s. So if we watching it now in 2023, that means that they're trying to figure out how to take it from pill to a higher form, which we have with social media. Because when you get into social media and the swiping and the liking and the blue light, right? That is the new opioid. So take that phone away from your kid. Take that phone away from an Instagram model. Watch what happens. They're gonna have the same symptoms that them people had popping them pills back in the late 90s and the early 2000s. But it's an invisible enemy like they talked about and they cloned Tyrone. Hollow man, hollow man, hollow man. They've tried to figure out, okay, how do we get the drug and the disturbance into the system to take them off what they supposed to be doing without leaving any traces? And they volunteering to take it. Here comes the technology. Now, I'm not against technology. I'm just against the ignorance of the understanding of what frequency is. A lot of people don't know what frequency is, so I say think about using the bathroom. If I drink a whole lot of water, I gotta use the bathroom more frequently. So the interval of the time in between each time I go to the bathroom is smaller. If I don't drink enough water, I'm not using the bathroom frequently. So the time is wider. Look at a wavelength, the closer ones is a high frequency. The slower is a low frequency. And when we're dealing with the social media, when we're the blue light, when we're dealing with the 5G, you're dealing with 2.4 gigahertz. That's 2.4 billion cycles a second. Our brain, our heart, our body is like 8 hertz, 7 hertz. The Schumann resonance is 7.83 hertz. But we talking about getting hit by 2.5 billion a second. There's no way you are overstanding all what's being done to your godlyhood inside of that framework.
You know, I always say what you do frequently becomes your frequency. Because I believe that if you can match the frequency of your goal, your dream, your idea, your solution, you can bring it forth into reality. So it's like, for school, some people go to school for 4 years, some people can cut that down in like 3 years. The only difference is the frequency of learning and testing, right? So that they can move forward and they can decrease the amount of time it takes them to accelerate and graduate. So the more frequent you learn, the more frequent you do the right thing, right? It changes the frequency of your life. So for some people, let's say if you want to make, you got 100 days and you want to make $100,000, that means the frequency is I need to make $1,000 per day. If I want to shorten that, I need to make $2,000 per day. I can do it in a shorter amount of time. So I look at goals as frequencies because now I know how much time and what frequency I have to live on. Or if I live above that frequency, then I know I'm going to hit that in a shorter amount of time. Right? So for me, frequency of Black America to reach the place that we need to meet, how many meetings like this we need to have, how many times we need to shout with each other, how much good food we need to eat, how much content that we need to intake, because they are dominating the frequency, so they control the frequency of the culture. So therefore, the dominant frequency always wins, right? So if they have a high frequency, you have a low frequency, it will dominate yours. So if you're not intaking good as much as you're intaking bad, the bad will over-dominate the good that you intake. This is what happens with influence. This is what happens with content and media. This is what happens with your diet. So you eat the fruit one time a year, but then you eat the negative food the rest of the year. So what you do frequently becomes your frequency. But you want to end off on any notes, my brother?
That was powerful. Vibrate higher. You know, we got to vibrate higher. And to go off what you just said, and with frequency, see, that's the key. So we want longevity, right? So longevity deals with the opposite of something called senescence. Senescence is aging. Our bodies are designed. You said you started off with the godhood, right? This is it right here. Our bodies are not designed to age and to die. Our bodies are designed to live on forever. But it's because of the poisoning and the toxicity that creates senescence, right? And what you call zombie cells inside the body. So what we need is something called senolytics. Senolytics are the type of molecules and substances that are able to get rid of those senescent cells, bring youth back to those senescent cells. And you do that by dropping entropy. Entropy is chaos. Entropy is disorder. You walk in a room, you don't know what's going on, everybody's talking at the same time. That's entropy. What gets rid of entropy is order. So when you create constant frequency of doing a thing, you're establishing order and you're organizing in a system that drops entropy down. So the more consistent your days become, you getting up in the morning, you drinking some lukewarm water, you giving thanks that you got another opportunity to get things right because we live in nothing but a Groundhog Day. We go outside, we take off our shoes, we ground, we watch the sunrise, we let Kepara enter into our pupil and stimulate the SCN, to stimulate the hypothalamus, to stimulate the pineal, to stimulate the rest of our brain that tunes our body and gives us the timing, the tuning, the schedule for the entire day. Then we go out and we expose our skin so that the blood comes to the surface and the nitric oxide comes to the surface and our blood opens up and we start getting UV. Then we get UVB, now we got vitamin D. Now the vitamin D helps the melanin grow more during the strong times of the day. And we become very active, we move our body is meant to be moved. Because we have fascia. Fascia is a fancy way of saying spider webs. You got spiders in your body called fibroblasts that spin spider webs called fascia that keeps everything in our body glued together and feeds it energy. But it only does this if we move. Your lymphatic system needs to move. Your circulatory system needs to move. Your fluids need to move. Then, when the sun starts going down, you catch that sun again. You program yourself for the night because you just soaked up all the light during the day in all of your phenols and molecules that you get out of the powerful foods you eat. Then you lay down and the melatonin increases and you get some rest. And while you sleep, you compress yourself and guess what happens? All the light that you sucked up during the day now gets released internally in your body and you rejuvenate, not heal. Not heal. Healing and rejuvenation is not the same thing. Healing leaves scar tissue. Healing means that it's not what it once was. Rejuvenation, regenerating, is when you are able to return things back to its original state. So with that being said, the most dynamic thing that this honey does that I have the pleasure of sharing with all of y'all through try and true testimonial is it reverses the effects of the jab. So everybody who got that thing and got them spike proteins flowing all throughout the body, this right here removes them spike proteins and reverts your genes back to the wild type. Wild type genes are your original indigenous genes. And why would it not be able to do this if this is the original bee? This is the original bee. The bee is responsible for all the photosynthesis. There's no food without pollination. So who's gonna know your genetics and genes better than the people that laid the food and the nutrients down throughout the world? So when you get this honey in your body, you flush and you take that mutation back and give your opportunity, your body another chance, because ain't no man have the power
to take you away from God unless you allow it.
That's the mic job. Peace, family. It was in 19 minutes, you're going to take keys. Yeah, give it to the off the grid. Tap in.
Once again, put your hands together for KT, the artist degree. 19 Kings.